So we're all veterans of covering the last 3 weeks of the campaign, right? It's a different dynamic, I think, from 3 weeks in. We no longer can say there's plenty of time left. People will say every day is a night, a million, days a year, but we're in the end game now. And of course, early voting is underway in a lot of places. There's a list of things you can cite today that are not good for the Harris campaign. And this is not a Republican list or a marked list. This is a Democratic list of Democrats, elected officials and operatives and voters that they're worried about. And the three of us discussed this before we went on the air. There's no analog for the Republican side. It doesn't mean Harris is going to lose. It doesn't mean this race isn't close. But it is interesting that currently there's no analog on the other side. Now, did Kamala Harris sit in the White House while January 6th happened? No. So there's things that are negative for Trump on the other side. But we look at where we are in this race, knowing that both candidates have at least 46% of the vote, in not just nationally, but in the battleground states, almost certainly as a floor, as a minimum floor, 46. So what's on the Republican, the Democratic side? Number one, complaints about her schedule. Her schedule is lighter than Trump. Today's a typical example. She's starting her day at 4:30. I'm sure she's doing stuff during the day that is intended to help her to win. But there are Democrats who are asking, why isn't she in 3 battleground states a day? Why isn't she in 4 media markets in Pennsylvania today rather than 1? If you assume she's behind, which again, I think she is right now, not by a lot, why isn't she working harder? Number two, she's spending a lot of the week reinforcing, as Dan said, black vote. Okay, great. That's a problem they have to solve. But 3 weeks to go, and they're proposing new policies targeted at Black Americans, doing events for Black Americans. Let's be honest, guys, about American politics. She's targeting Black voters. A, that's a problem that she decides to do it this late. And B, some Black voters won't like it. That's just a reality. 3, she's talking about stuff that really has no effect on the real lives of real people. Okay? When you are in the end and you're looking at the polls every day and the stuff you haven't been doing that isn't working according to your own data, what do? You start talking about new stuff to see what sticks to the wall. So she's now talking about a bunch of stuff related to Trump's being secretive. No medical records, won't debate, won't do 60 minutes. Let's look at 104, please.
His staff won't let him do a 60 minutes interview. Every president for the last half century has done one, anyone who's running for president. Everyone has done it, except Donald Trump. He will not debate me again. I put out my medical records. He won't put out his medical records. And you have to ask, why is his staff doing that? And it may be because they think he's just not ready and unfit and unstable and should not have that level of transparency for the American people. There's a real choice in this election.
Did this in North Carolina last night at a rally. It got a lot of the attention in the press. I will say, having covered winning and losing campaigns, Bob Dole, end of 1996, where's the outrage? John Kerry, same thing. Mike Dukakis, Hillary, or not Hillary, because that's who's going to win. Everybody who's ever lost in the last 3 weeks, they start to bring up new stuff. If you go to a Green Bay diner today, and Governor Walz is in Green Bay, I believe, eventually, ask people there if they're going to decide who they vote for based on whether Trump will do a 60 minutes interview or whether he'll do another debate. These are not. But let me just finish the point, and then I'm going to go to yes. I'm sorry to monologue, but feel strongly about this. These are all signs that they know they have a problem. And I'll say, if you can find me a single voter who will vote based on this, good luck, Sean.
I just think, look, it's one thing to bring up new issues, right? You're trying to excite people, whatever. Number two, I agree with you that those aren't issues that are going to get people excited. But number three, and this should have been number one, is the idea that you're bringing up not doing interviews, number one, after dodging the media for as long as she has, is rather rich. Number two, for being complicit in covering up Joe Biden and his capability and cognitive and physical issues, to suddenly talk about medical records is laughable. And number four, I just think that all of these things are baked in. I mean, people know what they're getting with Trump, and the idea, like, he doesn't suffer from not talking enough, from doing enough interviews, from being engaging enough. And so I just think of all the things that they could be saying, like, you are scraping below the bottom of the barrel at this point. This reeks of desperation. God bless him for doing it.
Yeah. She used one of her news cycles yesterday in that interview in her North Carolina appearance to not be talking about turning the page on Trump or whatever they want the message to be. They used up a news cycle talking about stuff, Sean, that I agree with you is just not going to break through. Dan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, as a Democrat, I wish she had gone after Trump early on being the old candidate and his medical history. Like those first few weeks when she was out doing 2 events a day and Trump was largely playing golf, like there was a little chatter that was starting to build of concern with Republicans. Where is Trump? Why isn't Trump out more? But now at this late stage to Sean's point, like no one is going to sit there and say, Harris is really open with the media and engaged and an open book, and Trump is the one hiding. I mean, it just is not the case.
Can I go one point on the schedule, Mark?
The other thing is like when you watch Obama and Clinton, like, I was watching the video, Mark, you sent on Bill Clinton, and I just started smiling. Like, he's just so good. You don't hear, the rest of the surrogates aren't talking about this. So to your point, like you're flooding the zone with everyone in the party and everyone's talking about different stuff. And that to me is a little bit concerning because Republicans, I can go anywhere and it's all off the same hymnal.
Yeah, it was interesting. To Dan's point, I'm watching Andy Bashir yesterday, and he was talking about Kentucky and clean air. I mean, it was almost like he was like, hey, I'm just going to talk about how great I've done as governor. But there was no connection to what she's talking about. But number 2, this gets back to the schedule point. Look, do I think that she's probably doing stuff today? Sure. I think we can all say that. But if you're from a PR standpoint suffering from your base, wondering, are you working hard? You put a schedule out that says she will tape an interview with this person at 9. She will then have a call with her staff. You create the impression that she's busting her butt. And they're not even trying on that front to create the perception that she's hustling. And she goes out there the other day and says, we're the underdog, we're behind. Okay, then show me you're the underdog. Act like the underdog, but you don't go, we're the underdog, I'm sleeping in till 2 on Monday.
Yep. If you could eavesdrop on the text chains of House Republicans, they are saying, Trump's going to win, we're going to keep the majority. Okay. If you could eavesdrop on the text of House Democrats, what they'd be saying is, we got to keep the majority because she could well lose. And we may want to start talking publicly about House majority is the only thing Democrats can salvage, because although the Senate data continues to be mixed, in all likelihood, Republicans will take the majority in the Senate.
Can I make one more point, Mark? Last night I did that live episode of the Road to 270 on the show, and I brought in state people from every one of the states and asked them specifically about the ground game and said, hey, look, this is the concern that we have in every state. I went to bed with a smile on my face, feeling good about what's happening in every one of these states, from Michigan to Nevada. I couldn't believe the numbers that were coming out from these folks talking about numbers of door knock, numbers of conversion, whatever. The Achilles heel that I think a lot of people had as a perception of what was wrong with Trump, his operation, was alleviated, at least for me last night, hearing these outside groups, some of these strategists talk about the activity in each of the battleground states. And that was something that I think at least the Harris campaign could rely on, is to say, well, we've got a great operation. And I don't doubt that they do, but that was one potential upside that they had. I don't believe that to be the case anymore.
Right. So Democrats will continue to say what's going to power victory in what they believe is a close race is abortion rights, gender gap, stronger ground game, and whatever other factors played in 2022, which demonstrated that there was no red wave. That's what they're counting on.